Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Travel Safely with Brian Mulligan. Travel Safely is presented by Applied Information, creator of the Travel Safely smartphone app.
Welcome everyone to Travel Safely, the business talk show bringing you the latest in innovation from transportation, technology, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Brian Mulligan, coming to you from the Subaru Business RadioX studio in Gwinnett County, Georgia. The show is sponsored by Applied Information, a technology company here in Gwinnett focused on using technologies to save lives and improve traffic. Our guest today is Emily Morris, founder and CEO of Emrgy Hydro, based in Atlanta. Emrgy Hydro is a tech innovator whose modular turbines harness the power of water as a clean, distributed energy source. Welcome, Emily, to the show.
Hi, Brian. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Oh, great. Our topic for the day. This is kind of pretty innovative. This is entrepreneurship at its best. A new and innovative approach to clean energy using the oldest and most renewable source of energy. That's water. Emily and her team at Emrgy are making hydropower affordable and cool again. So let's find out more. Let's start with the Emily Morris story. So
Sure.
How on earth did you end up in Georgia as an entrepreneur to waking up one morning and say, I'm going to start a hydropower company?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, as a, 5'4" young female, I get that question a lot in a primarily male-dominated industry. How did I end up in hydropower? I started my career in the engineering world and have worked on teams of engineers to build new technology innovations, really my whole career. And
were you a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer?
So funny enough, I sort of wedged my way into the engineering world without an engineering degree formally.
Oh, wow.
I started through working in technology development in mostly defense contracting, but also government funding. And so I worked initially for a small firm that built all kinds of new technology for the military or for other federal purposes. And so I started out by writing grants or proposals for funding to build new and very cool things. And so I worked on a team of engineers to build all kinds of things from energy storage for battlefield applications to braking systems for aircraft carriers to even hoverboards or electric transportation as well. And so this technology, Emrgy's technology, actually was born there, and it was initially funded by the U.S. Office of Naval Research as a technology that would be well suited for the U.S. Navy. Over time, I became really passionately inspired by what a technology or product could do that was able to develop or to deliver distributed hydroelectric power in remote areas in a way that was more continuous than the sun for solar power, more predictable than the wind compared with wind power. And I knew that this was something that had a strong a market application. And the Department of Energy also recognized this too and started to fund the technology while I was working at that firm. And eventually I actually proposed to the firm to acquire the intellectual property out on my own. So I did that, started the process in 2014, went and found a local attorney here in Atlanta that helped me navigate what that would look like, since that wasn't necessarily the business that the firm was in. And over the course of 2015, after I had acquired this IP, but continued to keep my job like any, let's say, cautious risk-taking entrepreneur
does. Absolutely. You got to pay the bills as well.
Yep, I did what I knew best, which was seek out funding sources, specifically federal funding sources for growing this product. And so in 2015, we were awarded about $1.25 million of dollars from the U.S. Department of Energy to continue the product development. And that was really the push I needed to come over full time, start building a team, really vet the technology for market, define the market applications, and start seeking out pilot opportunities. So over the course of let's say 15 till now, here in 2019, we've been able to complete 3 pilot scale and then ultimately a full scale implementation of our product here in the U.S., with our flagship installation being a 100 kilowatt 10 module hydropower array, so to speak,
right.
In Denver, Colorado.
Oh, yes.
That is an energy asset of the city of Denver and their water authority there. And now we are in the process of scaling this beyond these initial arrays into real meaningful energy sources for people all over the world.
I mean, that's a great story. I mean, we can take this discussion in all kinds of ways.
Sure.
I mean, one of the things that's hard for an entrepreneur, and I've been a serial entrepreneur all my life, is the business of actually. Well, each stage of the entrepreneurial journey is difficult. There's the business of getting the initial pilot schemes. Then there's the business of transitioning and getting into the market. And then the third one is scaling the enterprise. So let's talk about each one of those in turn.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question. How helpful has Georgia been to you?
I wave the Georgia flag and the Atlanta flag everywhere I go. I have been obviously promoting this business and selling the product and selling the vision, not only all over the country, but in many places around the world. And, I often get asked, why are you starting a clean energy business in Georgia? Georgia has many a high concentration of fossil fueled plants, and we're not necessarily known here for clean energy. And most recently, we raised some venture capital where the lead investor was from California, where this seems to be probably a bit more familiar to them. And they asked me the question again: why are you based in Georgia, not based in California? And there's a number of very concrete reasons why Georgia has been a great place for Emrgy to thrive and for me to do business. On the one hand, of course, it's my home. I was born here, and so I have a little bit of a bias toward it. But really, being in Atlanta, the city of Atlanta was the first entity that actually let us build and start operating our product inside of water infrastructure, which is what our market is. The city of Atlanta allowed us to install a first unit at the city's largest wastewater treatment facility that we were able to use as a launch pad, as a testing platform. And as a place that we could host new prospects that might be interested in our product. In addition, the city of Atlanta was, interestingly, through their economic development authority, the first venture investor in Emrgy.
Nice.
We actually engaged with them in a small convertible note that was used to fund early company operations. And while I don't think that they're still in that business, it was a really amazing way to get some real, hard investment dollars that could contribute to our company growth here in the city. And then, beyond that, we work with resources with the state of Georgia, looking at exporting and other resources that they have here in the city. But it also, just culturally speaking, we're a bit of a unique fish in this pond, so to speak. Whereas there's a lot of entrepreneurs and companies that are building new cybersecurity technologies or medical technologies or things like that. We're one of the only fish that are building clean energy. And so as a result, we get exposure to opportunities or events or things that we may not necessarily get access to if we were in an area flooded with clean energy entrepreneurs, like in the Bay
California Bay Area,
like
things
that.
like.
So that's been really nice.
It's pretty interesting. In many ways, your journey parallels that of applied information, which also, I get the question, why Atlanta? Why Georgia? Mm-hmm. And there's also a reason. But it's actually a really great place to build a business for all sorts of reasons. You can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from here, originally from Cape Town in South Africa, but been here for some 25 years building a succession of technology businesses. So talking about the technology is that the business of, the clean energy space is a really good space. And I like the idea of, electric cars are the future of transportation in some respect. And so now you can potentially, with some solar panels, drive your car on yesterday's sunshine. But now you can also drive your car on the river that's flowing outside your subdivision. Is that how it works? How does it all fit together?
Eventually, I'd love to see, especially as our transportation network becomes increasingly electrified, I would love to see Emrgy being a big part of how that fleet is energized. And essentially, what you can imagine from our technology is a hydropower turbine. Think modernized water wheel, like I'm sure you've seen in photos of yesterday, and really throughout many centuries, where we've had water wheels that have provided the energy necessary to catalyze industrial processes, all the way to some of the biggest backbones of our modern electrical grid across the world are hydropower facilities. Now those facilities are typically very large, very centralized, but the energy economy of the 21st century requires, as you said, for yesterday's sunshine, it requires small, it requires modular, standardized, very cost-effective, rapidly scalable equipment like solar panels. And so what Emrgy is doing is bringing that product style into hydropower. So, gone are the days where we're building really massive dams, and instead what you can picture is something the size of a large SUV. Think something like a Hummer, and it's completely self-sustaining, self-encapsulated. You just place that box right into the channel, whether it's the river outside your subdivision or inside of a water treatment plant or in an agricultural irrigation canal, something like that. And as water flows through that box, it activates the modernized water wheel or the spinning turbine that generates electric power. And one of these SUV-sized pieces of equipment, it costs about the same as an SUV, about $40,000 to $50,000 a piece, right. And it generates the energy equivalents of about 7 to 8 U.S. homes. And so, you could share one, so to speak, with your neighbors in your subdivision. Now, that's also, I want to be clear that that's for us energy hogging Americans. If you took these back to your hometown in Cape Town, or in many places in Europe where they're much more energy efficient, or in the developing world. Yeah, it could be up to 100 electrified homes in India on one of these modules. And so the way we deploy them is similar to solar in that we do fields of them or arrays down the stream. And so you can imagine, one after the next, being able to electrify, whole communities, villages, or eventually, towns as well.
Well, fantastic. Well, after the break, I think we're going to talk about access to market and how you go from where you are to covering the world in these things. But let's talk about after the break, and let's go to 30 Seconds with Sarah.
This is your 30 Seconds or Less with Sarah. A new report from Navigant Research claims that smart parking spaces are expected to more than triple in the next decade. Smart parking spaces are composed of sensor networks, camera systems, and software that tracks and reports locations of available spaces. Navigant said that on-street, individually monitored smart spaces will grow nearly 14% a year from 240,000 to 780,000 spaces between 2019 and 2028. Navigant expects the largest growth in Asia, followed by Europe and North America. With more and more citizens moving to urban areas, the need for this technology has never been more apparent. Back to you, Brian.
In case you're just joining us, this is Travel Safely with Brian Mulligan. How to save lives, improve traffic, drive commerce, and help the environment. With our guest today, Emily Morris, founder and CEO of Emrgy Hydro and a fellow entrepreneur in this high-risk, high-reward business of jumping out of an aeroplane with these parts of a parachute and figuring out how to assemble it on your way down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So given that you got now some prototypes and you've figured out how to do this, how do you go to market? Because the transportation business that I'm in is a very slow to change market, and I can only imagine the water business and the hydroelectric business is even more so. How do you change the world?
Yeah,
from where you are?
It's a great question, and in fact, one that I've encountered a number of interesting phrases and pieces of advice along my way. When I first started the business, I went and visited a solar company, and I told them what I was looking to do is to bring this, standardized and flexible design into water power. And the CEO of the company said to me, "Are you crazy?" He said, "What we're doing in solar power is extremely difficult work, pioneering this industry, and the sunshine is free for everyone." He said, "You're going to do this in water where wars have been fought over water for hundreds of years? You're crazy." And I listened very carefully to that. And one of the key decisions that I made really early on was really to only focus on the early go-to-market for what I refer to as non-controversial waters. So waters that have no fish, no wildlife, no recreation, no navigation,
right.
Nothing that can
Good
cause
idea.
long timelines, complex permitting or high regulation. So, what areas are non-controversial? This would mainly be water infrastructure. So waters that are already defined for some purpose. So water treatment plants, that's where we installed our very first pilot here in Atlanta with the city, as well as water conveyance. And so whereas it's not so common here in the Southeast to convey water on the surface, instead we have a lot of groundwater. In the 16 western U.S. states, there are thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles of water conveyance networks where water is used for irrigation purposes or municipal purposes or otherwise. And when you look out globally, our neighbors to the south in Mexico, one of my colleagues was there earlier this week, where they have 46,000 kilometers of surface water transport for, especially in arid places. Being able to move water is very, very
Great
important.
point. I hadn't actually thought of that. There are all these channelized, water conveyances. You put them carrying water from one place to another. Well, you may as well pick up the energy on the way.
Exactly. And in fact, conveying that water can be very energy intensive if you have to
Lift it, yeah.
Yeah, if you have to lift it over different elevation changes. And so being able to not only make that process more efficient, but also to be able to initially go to market, get access with very quick decision-making processes with singular owners. I mean, from one entrepreneur to another, that you want to start selling your product in an area where you have low-hanging fruit,
right,
or places where you can get in quickly. And so that's our initial defined market. Could this eventually be used for the river outside your subdivision? I certainly hope so. But today, if there is any sign of environmental protection or fish or wildlife, we don't target those areas today.
Do you go to market through distributors, or who actually sells into this market? I'm sort of trying to think about if I wanted to sell one of your devices into a certain channel, I wouldn't know where to start. How do you start that process?
Yeah, great question. So, of course, our little team has a business development department, and we do direct sales to these agricultural municipal owners here in the U.S. Although, of course, we all know startups are tough enough with our little teams. How do you make an impact on the world with such a small team? And so partnerships is the way to do that, through distributor partnerships that would be over local geographies, or through more globally focused partnerships. So in July, we just announced a global partnership with GE Renewable Energy.
Oh, fantastic.
They will be now selling this product in 4 countries outside the U.S., as well as manufacturing these turbines for all of our projects here in the U.S. and abroad. And so we believe that from a scalability perspective, partnerships are key, so that way our customers can rest assured in the quality and the manufacturing expertise that comes from a partner like GE, whereas we also have the ability now to ship anywhere in the world. And so whether they're actually sold by an affiliate of Emrgy or GE, we're open to a number of opportunities to work in local areas to get this product out to an energy hungry society.
Wow, that's one thing that shows no sign of abating, is our energy hungry society. And so the business of having the right product at the right time, I often say that the technology business is actually a fashion industry, much more allied to Gucci and whatever it is than it is to the underlying technology, because you have to have the technology at the right time. And you seem to be sweetly placed for that.
Well, it's an excellent analogy. I love that, and it really has a lot of meaning here at Emrgy as well, because people say, well, hydropower has existed for centuries. Of course, you're not the first person to think that we should be able to do hydropower in a distributed way, and that's absolutely right. I knew I wasn't the first person to ever think of hydropower without a dam, without building a dam. But from a timing perspective, the distributed grid had not been set up yet until solar power and wind power really had the billions of dollars of investment to create that grid. And also a lot of the enabling components within that grid, smart inverter systems, energy storage, other types of, switch gear or other distributed sized equipment that didn't exist before then. And so without those, this distributed hydropower portfolio also couldn't exist. And so we're able to stand on the shoulders of what they've been able to develop, as well as the mindset that distributed energy is the future, and that we do need to have local energy sources and not just get it from the transmission side.
Because a huge, with this hurricane that's just come through, the huge business of resilience,
yes,
and distributed energy sources again have become into focus, that when you make a very brittle grid with only one power plant and all these transmission lines, and the power plant goes down for whatever reason, it all gets pretty difficult.
Yeah, it unfortunately, in a case like hurricanes, it has really shown us in the last couple of years really how it gets to be a human issue as well, that losing the access to power that you've had can have detrimental effects on the quality of life. And so, whereas, of course, we're in the for-profit business and we are looking to scale this in a way that makes really good business sense, you can't help but think about the aspect of what kind of what other kinds of services that having access to power enables for those that don't have it or lose it for one reason or another.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you, Emily, and thanks to you all for listening to Travel Safely, brought to you by Applied Information, the show about transportation technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Today we've been talking about reinventing one of the oldest ways to generate electric energy, hydropower. We've been talking with Emily Morris, founder and CEO of Emrgy Hydro, using micro hydropower to create clean and reliable energy sources for the grid. So Emily, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time, this is Brian Mulligan signing off from Business Radio X, and travel safely.